Hello, I'm Mark Lamos. I'm the artistic director of the Westport Country Playhouse, and I was the director of our production, which we are now streaming, of Man of La Mancha. And I'm here to join in a conversation with two marvelous colleagues who were essential parts of that production. Of course, Philip Hernandez, who played Cervantes and Don Quixote. Hi, Phil.
Hey.
And Andrew Sotomayor, who was the music director for the production and invaluable throughout. So we're going to have a little conversation, provide some background material, and maybe some unexpected things will come up as well. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for watching the stream of this production, which we're all very, very proud of. I thought I'd just get the ball rolling by asking you gentlemen, what was your first exposure to La Mancha, Philip? When did you first, when were you conscious of it? When did you know that, it existed in the world, and how did you feel about that?
I guess when I was a kid, my mother and father had the recording, the original cast recording with Richard Kiley. And that's where I first heard it. Didn't make much of an impression on me. But I did know that it was in the world. And I remembered the song, The Impossible Dream, because it was so powerful and big, and it always got my attention, but it was very much a peripheral kind of a thing.
Interesting. Yeah. That's kind of how my first exposure, actually, I saw the show at the Anta Theater in Washington Square. So I was there, in that when it was really kind of a very alternative space, it was a temporary space. It was Washington Square was very alternate lifestyle at that point. So the audience was always entering that theater from a different perspective than they would have done on Broadway.
I would have loved to have seen that.
It was interesting. It was also the first time I'd really seen a thrust stage because that's how it was designed, and that fascinated me. And then I spent a lot of time on thrust stages throughout my career. Andrew, how about you?
My mother introduced me to the show. I saw when I was about 8 years old, I saw the movie Oliver on HBO, and I was like, what is this? What is this thing that I'm watching where people sing their feelings and there's an intermission? Like, what is that? And she's like, well, that's a musical. And she pulled out all of her old records, and it was one of my first musicals that I really got into. And she was a big fan of it, and she would do the whole "I will impersonate a man" monologue for me all the time. It was a whole thing. So in our household, the show was like a low-key big deal in my musical theater education growing up.
Oh, fabulous. A mother who's actually encouraging, She
was a big fan. She loved it.
How wonderful. That's great. Were you kind of always interested too in music, Soto? Was that a big part of your life?
I did have a unique, there's all these weird pictures of me around the house in my diaper banging on the piano. And my brothers quit their piano lessons, and my mother was like, nope, you're going to quit too. And I had to campaign for piano lessons, but I always wanted to do it. So she finally relented.
Amazing. Oh.
Yeah.
Did you have a musical childhood, Philip, at all? Was music a part of it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I did the music programs in school. I remember playing the trumpet starting in I guess it was the fourth grade, I think it was. I started playing the trumpet, and I had a music teacher who was kind of an amazing man. I don't remember too much about him, but I remember one day he pulled me aside and he said, Philip, you are a leader of men. And I just went, oh, and that made such an impression on me. And I didn't quite know what he meant, but he believed in me, and that was really something. And the other thing was, I remember one day my dad, he couldn't make a baseball game that I was playing in because I loved baseball. I was a baseball fanatic. But I had a concert that night for playing the trumpet. And it was I think I played Bach Air in G. And he did see that. And he left me a note the next day when he went to work, because he did 2 jobs. He worked 2 jobs. And he left me a note and said, I'm sorry I missed the baseball game, but I was so happy that I made the concert. It was wonderful. And I was like, and also was something that just, fueled me in terms of my, my pursuit of music. And then I was in choir and, band in high school. And so that's, also I was an avid music listener to all the contemporary music at the time. But yeah, so it was musical.
That's great. That's a wonderful story. I wanted to talk about when Andrew and I first met you. We were in New York and we were holding auditions.
So was I drunk?
Sorry?
No, never mind.
These guys are terrible. I have to say. Get me. Soto and I were holding auditions for a number of roles, and there was this name, Philip Hernandez, was the person coming in next, and I was looking at the resume and I thought, wow, this guy has done some amazing things, Evita, and lots of other things on your resume. And almost from the moment you walked in, I just felt there was this aura about you that was everything I was seeking for the part, that I didn't even know I was seeking for the part until I saw you. Just your face, it was kind of amazing. And then you were gracious enough to sing, and that kind of had me in tears. And you read a little bit, and I just knew this was it. This was absolutely it. And I remember, Andrew, you and I just looked at each other like, that's it, close up shop, we've got him.
It was super clear, just that feeling. It was the performance. The performance of The Impossible Dream was incredible. To see that in Pro Studio 12 feet away was insane.
Yeah. And I just thought, I can't do this show with anybody else. I just can't do this show with anybody else. And I have so rarely had that feeling. It's kind of astonishing how, and I said, we have to move mountains. I don't care what, we've just got to get this amazing artist to do it. And then, of course, I found out as we got to know each other that you'd actually done the show before. Had you done it once or twice before ours? I can't remember.
I've done it more than once. I don't remember how many times. I almost didn't audition for it.
I know.
But my wife gave me the breakdown, and I looked you up. And that's the reason that I auditioned, because I looked you up and I looked at your resume and I was like, this guy's done a whole bunch of stuff. I said, this would be cool to work with him. And so I said, well, do I want to do another La Mancha? And I said, all right, let me go, let me go do it. I did. And it was wonderful. It was probably the best experience I think I've ever had in the theater. It was really, no, it was terrific. It really was.
Yeah, it's certainly up there for me as one of the very best. And it's a show that I didn't, it was a show that I wasn't really that interested in directing until people on my staff started telling me how incredibly popular it was and how popular it was with Latin audiences. And that demographic was, of course, something I was thrilled to think about bringing into the theater to see the production. And then that led to the idea to have an all-Latinx cast, which just made the whole thing so special somehow. Because here we're doing this old musical, and yet everybody in the cast was treating it like it was their story, like they were participating in something that was almost autobiographical. I have never had that happen in my entire life. And I still to this day look back on that and think through all the people who were in the show with us and just think, how was that a part of your story? Or how was this thing that you did a part of your life story? Somehow it was.
Well, it's part of our life story, I think. I can only speak for myself, of course, but I think the piece really, really teaches us that we can create our own reality. And oftentimes the outside world is telling you who you are and what you should think of yourself. And to be able to have the ability to tap into the fact that, no, this is who I choose to be, is very powerful. And so I think the fact we got all those Latinos together in one room and we were all saying, this is who we are, I think that was, for me, very personally powerful.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I really respond to the message of transformation, the opportunity of transformation in the piece. And that's one of the things that always drew me to it. It was always a bucket list show for me. So when you called, Mark, I was like, oh, wow, I would love to. That sounds fantastic. Because I've always been dying to do the show. And then to do it in that space with those people was such a rewarding experience. It was really, really special. I made my mother fly up to see it. I was like, you don't want to miss it. I promise you. You want to see the show. Then she made me get 14 opening night tickets because we roll 14 people deep. That's how we do it. But
how wonderful. Yeah, that was so special that she came. I still can't believe it. I know it was kind of a rehearsal period where, partially because, Philip, your investment in the role was so deep, having done it before, that, you know, I've done so much opera where I've worked with, you know, performers who did Butterfly before, and they did Tosca before, and they did whatever, and you're getting them after 5 productions of it, and your first thought is, oh, you know, it's just going to be kind of warmed up magic. They're not going to be interested, but they bring so much to it. And you were just like, I felt like I never ever gave a direction to you. It was like you led. And there's also something marvelous about that when there's a leading man in a company. I've learned over my years in the theater, a leading man or woman in the company, they need to lead the company. So when your music teacher said you're a leader, I thought, that's what I got. That's what I cast. I was lucky enough to have that leader there, sort of guiding us all in such a wonderful direction.
Thank you.
But it was, I thought it would be interesting for us a little bit to just chat about when the production opened, because 2 things were going on in the world, in America at any rate, that were in all the headlines and were driving all of our conversations about so many things outside of just getting La Mancha on its feet. These were the hearings with Justice Kavanaugh, the confirmation hearings where he was accused of sexual harassment. And so it was very much about the empowerment of women's voices and also sexual abuse of women in higher places. And of course, there's a terrible rape scene in La Mancha. And that character, the woman Aldonza, you know, rises out of the misery and the depredation of all that. And that's part of the glory of the musical as well. And that Quixote gives her that possibility. And then also the border crisis was at its very peak then, with ICE and children separated from their parents at the border, and these pictures of constant trauma of immigrants trying to get into this country. And our production, you know, the play takes place in a prison. And so Wilson Chin's scenic design had an enormous prison wall between the audience and the actors. And that was the first image of the production. It was as if the zeitgeist kind of played into the power of our production. Did you have any thoughts about that, you guys, when we were doing it? I mean,
well, I always say that La Mancha is a musical for our time, particularly for the things that you were saying. But really, I think La Mancha is a musical for every time, you know, for all time. Because like Soto was speaking about transformation, and what I was saying about, you know, the ability to choose your own reality and all of those things, everything that's happening in the world somehow plays into those things, and it makes it relevant. It's like the show is always relevant. Every time I've done it, there's something that resonates with the audience in a different way, you know? Mm-hmm. There's that moment in the show, gosh, it's been a while, but where, what's that line? A great line that I have about, oh God, I'm not going to be able to remember it. No, it's too tricky. It's too tricky. But there's this wonderful line in the show, and it got this enormous reaction every time, and it was because of what was happening in the world. It had a whole new resonance. Everybody went, "Oh!" every night, and it was great. So that's,
yes, it was some line about whatever I choose to believe.
Facts are the enemy of truth. That's what it was.
Facts are the enemy of truth. Yes.
Right. Dr. Carrasco would said that no, but this is fact, and I said fact. So the enemy of truth, and everybody went, whoa.
Very much so. Every night.
Every night, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Reminding me, that's great.
Yeah, and that and you hadn't gotten that when you'd done it in
no.
But also, you hadn't done it while we had that man for president. So
yes, exactly.
That was simply amazing. It was like an axis every night. You just thought, are they going to come back? Because it was so powerfully about the moment. You're right. But I think that's why the book has remained a classic since, the age of Shakespeare, right? It's the same feeling comes from the novel, that you can create a reality that will be more beautiful than the reality you're living in, and it can have a truth to it. And then you can cause others to live that reality, as Cervantes does with Aldonza, and us believing that we can dream an impossible dream. I read somewhere that one of the things that was so powerful about the original production down at Washington Square was that it was a time of alternate lifestyles really just starting to sprout in the 60s, and Washington Square was the center of that in New York City. So dreaming the impossible dream was something that, was going on right outside the theater. And you really did feel a kind of commonality with people who were forging a new way of living in America. It was very, very powerful, I remember. But I wanted to ask a couple more questions. Just what were, Philip, what were the biggest challenges you faced playing the show at the Playhouse? There are always challenges that actors face and have to overcome or meet or what have you. I wondered, what were they on this time through it for you?
Well, twofold, I think. One's physical, one's mental, emotional. The first are just the physical demands of the show. Vocally, it's not, singing vocally, it's not particularly demanding. I've done much more demanding roles vocally, but it does have its tricks. But just the size of the role, we did some combat in the show. It's like I almost never leave the stage. I feel like it's a big load. I feel like I have to carry the show, so I have to get ready for that every single night. So physically, I was always warming up and making sure that I had broken a light sweat before I ever hit the stage, and I was warmed up and ready to go. And I was always cheering everybody on and come on, let's go make magic. And because I wanted everybody to be, it's an important piece. And it changes lives. It changes people in the audience, and they think about their world differently. So there was that physical burden. But then also, since I had done the show so many times before, I wanted to find what was new for me in my life. Like Cervantes is at probably the lowest point in his life when the show begins. And I wanted to I wanted to find a place in myself that would that would make me doubt my worldview, that would make me doubt my conceptions about the world and about my relationships with people, because that's where he starts the show. Because I think by nature, he's a very optimistic man, as is, proven by Don Quixote. But he's doubting everything. And so to find that starting point for myself and to allow that to be new in a piece that I've done many, many times was always a challenge, because I would find myself going toward things I've done before, and I would say, no, do the opposite, just to see what would happen. So I think those are the two big challenges for me. And they were pretty steep.
Yeah. That's daunting. That's amazing and so complex, Phil. Really very powerful to carry that burden into the theater and onto the stage. And then I never, ever saw a performance that didn't seem as fresh as if you were just minting it while you were doing it. That's what always amazed me. What were the musical challenges, Soto, that you faced? I mean, we had to reduce the size of the orchestra, but I'm sure there were others, right?
Oh yeah, well, beyond the reduction, it was a new imagining of a lot of it. And Wayne Barker, my goodness, his work was spectacular. So it was working on a piece that I knew very, very well and really trying to find the music in a new version of it. And that was so unique for me. And I think it was, I tend to be very like fussy about details. And Wayne during that process was very encouraging about like, he's like, you really just need to like open yourself up though as an artist and be there with them. And it was very, very challenging to like really emotionally surrender to the piece and be there specifically for that finale. I always got super weepy during that finale because when you allow yourself to be in the journey with the actors and what they're doing, it creates a different experience as a conductor. And it was challenging to have to start that process over again, to give that much to it, to get the music out of it, and then to have to go back to the top the next night. It's an exhausting show, but the freshness of the orchestration really helped sort of like amplify it. I had a marimba solo at one point, and I'll never forget that marimba solo. How satisfying is that? We found a way to get some marimba into Mancha La Mancha. It was really beautiful, but it's also a hard count. The meter changes every few bars, so you got to stay on top of that thing. My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you know, musically for me, I always felt enormously supported by that band. I really did. I always felt like I could kind of like lay back and it would kind of lift me up. There was a sense of buoyancy to it, which is not always the case. A lot of times the band is just doing the band and you're singing on the top, but I felt supported the whole time.
Oh, that means so much. Thank you.
No, that was
really wonderful.
Yeah, I felt that too. I mean, I just never felt there was any moment that I felt your connection sort of with what was going on stage was so powerful. And your emotional connection to the life on stage was more powerful than most conductors of musicals that I've dealt with. Wayne Barker, for those folks who are joining us, was the musical arranger. He took Mitch Lee's orchestration and reduced it so that we could fit it into the playhouse. I also thought it was so alive because we placed the musicians up above the audience.
So exciting, yeah.
And it was just like being in some great Spanish cathedral, you know, where there were antiphonal choirs and trumpets and things. It was very, very exciting. Well, we have to bring this to a close. I hope that folks watching the stream of this extraordinary production that we all experienced so personally, I hope you'll enjoy it if you haven't seen it yet. And if you have, I hope you enjoyed it at least half as much as we enjoyed making it for you. So, Soto, thank you so much. Andrew Sotomayor, Philip Hernandez, great leading man, and I hope we're all working together again sometime soon. Okay?
Amen.
Much love to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.